So welcome to today's talk for HCI with our paper entitled Design Futures and Ecological Citizenship. It's looking at public interest technologies for the purposes of regenerative interaction opportunities. So welcome, my name is Dr. Rob Phillips. I'm a senior tutor of the Royal College of Art. This work, as you will have seen from the first slide, is collaborative amongst many other colleagues. It is also part of a project, a Network Plus project called Ecological Citizens. We are sponsored by the EPSRC, and that is coming from the Royal College of Art, Wrexham University, Stockholm Environmental Institute in York. And yeah, that's part of our collaboration. John.
And my name's John Willshire, so I run Smithery, which is a strategic design practice in the UK, and I'm also a guest lecturer on the design futures at the RCA with Rob and team.
So here, to contextualise what we're going to talk about, and we talk about this a lot more in the paper, so please refer to it. We're talking about citizenship as practice. We're not talking about territorial waters. We believe that a citizen is something that is claimed, enacted, and performed. And throughout all of these things, we believe that if you can democratize technologies, then you can open up new ways of positivity, of benefits, of giving and providing people the autonomy to be able to change and evolve those systems that exist within them, which is really critical. So that's how we see a citizen and citizenship within design. There's something that's really important to differentiate. So we see citizen design as something that really is kind of, transcending the normal traditional limitations of what's happening. So it's about giving people agency. However, here within this project, something that's very specific is we are ecological citizens. So we believe about cultivating sustainable intent. So you are not trying to think about sustainable practice, regenerative practices towards the end, but it's every single thing that you do. And that's the biggest difference in how we frame this work and how we take it forwards. I think it's critical also for what we're doing in a broader sense, mainly because over time, that's what we should be looking at. We're already living outside of our planetary boundaries, so we have to look at regenerative practices. An example of this where our Network Plus project came from was a project called My Nature Watch. Now, what this was a collaboration between the Interaction Research Studio that's now at Northumbria and the Design Products Programme at the Royal College of Art. So it was a DIY piece of technology that people could make, they could repair, they could take apart, they could use, but it was mainly as a trail camera. So trail cameras traditionally cost about £200. This one cost about £30. It used componentry that you would usually find in a school or potentially different homes. But over a period of time, it really changed the way that people interacted with the natural world around them. It was broadcast on BBC Springwatch, and I think over the last 4 years, we've had 3.5 million people engage with it. So it's been a really big project. The most critical point of this example project was not just that people made the camera. People also started to think about the ecologies in their gardens, their spaces, how they were rewilding and what they were doing. So they were really becoming ecological citizens, and there was this balance and interplay between it. And I think that's something that's really important, is that the product is how do we generate the future of being an ecological citizen rather than just the actual finite thing that we created. And I think that's something very different within the work that we're looking at. So we have these 3 steps within the framework that we put together for ecological citizenship. So one is, again, how you are developing people, they're mapping existing assets that they're using, they're looking at regenerative potential in every single means. You're looking at ecological positive action. So you're not trying to be extractive. And what you're trying to do is aim towards collective autonomy. So within many design projects, I think quite a lot of studios, quite a lot of academics will find it quite terrifying that actually you're designing really so that other people can take over what you're doing. You're reconsidering what intellectual property is. But I think that's where this becomes the most interesting and where it becomes the most disruptive. So we're looking towards these spaces. And I think one thing, again, that's really, really critical is ecological positive action. Okay. I think something that we all need to come to terms with within sustainable practices, quite often it's talked about as good and bad. We're not monks. We live in very, very different terms. We have the ability to make selections. We're trying to mitigate against our impacts. And I think the thing is that we're looking for a collective aim. I think we need to move well past this is good, this is bad, sustainable practices. Because if you look at the happiness of medieval monks, I don't think they were that happy. The next thing is how you support this collective autonomy. And I think, within the structures and frameworks of what we are doing, we're well aware of the barriers and challenges of this. For example, how you look at intellectual property, how do you look at knowledge property, how do you create this? We get that. Quite often the open source movement has been some of the quickest means to work and develop. So, you need to bring this frame to the work that we're looking at, because it's not just about the IP of what we're creating. It's not just about an Uber tech of something that we're creating. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, John, who's going to take things from here.
Thanks, Rob. So we're a strategic design practice, and we've described that as bridging disciplines and departments, roles and responsibilities concerned with the factors around a thing and not just the thing itself. So over the years, a lot of that practice means making tools and frameworks and ways of people helping see the world differently. And so this chimes a lot with what Rob's talking about when it comes to ecological positive action. You're going like, how can I see the world differently so that it might change? One of the tools, if you go to the next slide, Rob, is the obliquoscope, which we've been using, started on a course. We're on at IED in Barcelona, and we've been using it for about 6 years. Essentially, it's a frame with which to investigate the world and go, what is this? Why does it exist? How did it get here? And so on. It takes you into a questioning phase of just looking at the world around you in whatever you want to regard that as. You can see everything from the Acropolis to a USB charger there. And going, okay, so let's think a bit more about beyond the surface of what we see. So sometimes we use something riffing off Richard Buchanan's 4 Orders of Design, just to ask people to look at the appearance of things, the materials they consist of, beyond that, the interactions they create, and the systems that support them. When Rob and I started working on this project together, this felt like half the story. This felt like just sort of like being able to hold that up and look at the world as a citizen is about going, okay, so I can see what the world is like now, but I don't really have a framework for how I might ask the right questions about how it might change. What ecologically positive action could we take? Next slide. So what we did was we pulled together the 4 roles from the Design Council's systemic design model of system thinker, leader and storyteller, designer maker, and connector and convener. And then took some work that the RSA in the UK is doing around 10 capabilities for the 21st century, and just built a matrix of questions and began to say, what does it mean to be a system thinker acting with the capability of composure or care, or courage? And we found that generating a set of questions like this enabled you not just to look at the world, but to suddenly go, okay, so how might that be different? What would change in 10 years in the instruction manual? How do you have to listen here to hear the real story of others? Next slide. So this became a field kit, a regenerative design field kit, we called it. It goes under the name Where the Light Gets In for all the Leonard Cohen fans in the room. And it really is sort of like pairing those two things, the obliquoscope and the set of questions, is what can you see And how do you really describe it as a thing? And how might it be changed? So just thinking about all of these questions, which, for instance, which four go together and which begin to give you a real sense of, okay, so I can imagine a really different future where we can make an ecologically positive action and impact shaped around changing these things. Next slide. So in various tests and classes and with private sector clients and public sector clients and so on, what are the sorts of things that have unfolded? So these are some images from the first test we ran with the Design Futures module at the RCA. Our initial introduction to the kit was very bound. It was like, what is in this classroom? Let's not even go into the corridors or the street beyond or whatever else. It's like, what can we see in the space that we are in? Next slide. And I was really surprised by the imaginative leaps that the students could immediately take. This is my favorite one where they started sort of like taking some of the sound baffling and scraping parts off and going, this is what we're examining. We want to know where this came from. Our initial kind of like feeling was, well, we think this will be all right to do in the classroom because people have things in their bag. But they really got stuck into all the sound baffling, the way that the chairs were stacked and the mechanisms for doing that, where they came from, and so on. So the creative constraints of even just being in that room didn't phase people using the obliquoscope to take their study of the world around them to the next level. Next slide. And then beyond that, once they started looking at these things, they could say, okay, well, actually, how can we tell different stories of these futures prompted by these specific different sets of questions? And there was rapid iteration and sketching and looking at different alternatives. And this is really a theme of whenever this kit has been used and we get feedback from it, it's sort of like people saying, oh, this sort of, it takes us to a different place really quickly and in unexpected ways as well. Next slide. So these are some of the things that from the student projects which unfolded after the initial introduction, and just that you could see the students going out and beginning to question the world around them and thinking about, okay, where are all the important places that we could intervene and find ecologically positive actions that we want to use as part of our studies, but also suggest to local communities and so on. Next slide. So if there are two major insights that have come out for this stuff so far, it's this. Firstly, the sort of the obliquoscope itself does lead to faster focus for people. Just having this thing to aim at the world around you, and it could be the thing on the desk or it could be the building on the horizon, allows people to focus on a thing, but actually unpack through those, from the appearance to the material to the interactions, down to the systems behind them, really unpack what those things are in a very kind of Bruno Latour style into articulation of things as gatherings. And then the second half of it, which we didn't have and we just used the viewer on its own, is this level of deeper discussion. I've heard from other teachers and other people who've used it in different contexts. It's like it takes the level of conversation somewhere really deep, somewhere sort of like we didn't think we were going to be contemplating this so soon, so quickly. So, but really narrowing into kind of like where is it that we can make the real interventions and changes and to develop those ecologically positive actions that we need in society today. So, Rob.
So thank you very much for listening to our talk. Just two acknowledgements that are also in the paper, which is Andy Thornton and Lizzie Shupak, who were involved in the design and development of the kit. Now, if you would like to know more about the Ecological Citizens Network, then please check it out. Also, if you'd like to know more about this particular project, then please check that out too. We look forward to the Q&A, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.